for joining us today at the session on a very important subject and a very subject which is very close to our heart called Digital India. And the subject for today's discussion is we will talk about its STREM and the way forward with emerging technologies. We would like to personally thank Sri Abhishek Singh, MD and CEO of Digital India Corporation. He wears many hats, of course, the President and CEO of NEGD and CEO of MyGov, Ministry of Electronics and IT for accepting our invitation and joining us here today. So we know that it's a very busy day for you. Thank you for sparing time for us to have this discussion. I would also like to thank our Chairman, TED Council, Mr. Himanshu Kapania, who would also be moderating today's session. He is also the Vice Chairman for Aditya Birla Management Corporation Private Limited. And our co-chair, Mr. Kanishka Ejewal, he's a co-chair for AI and the Digital Transformation Committee of FICCI. And of course, in his own capacity, he's the head AI India and South Asia, AWS, services line for the guidance and the support in curating this session. This is a very, very power-packed session. We have the industry leaders, and I know that all of us are really looking forward to them, and none of them needs much introduction. So I'll just say a little bit about them. We have today with us Dr. Lavneesh Anana. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs, the APAC and Japan, SAP India Private Limited. Mr. Vikram K, Senior Director, Industry Verticals, HPE. Mr. Gaurav Agarwal, co-founder, 1MG, and Colonel Haridas, CEO and co-founder, Datawell Analytics. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will really look forward to hear your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about Digital India, it's something which is not new to anybody. We have been witnessing its benefits in our day-to-day lives, whatever we do, how we live in, how do we communicate, how do we do business. Digital India has touched us everywhere, and it has only been possible with the joint efforts of course, the government who is leading it and the industry who is supporting it, and the citizens who are driving its benefits. It's one of the programs which has been acclaimed across the world for the achievements it has got. We have already completed 6 years on 1st of July this year, and we really look forward to take the journey strong in a further stronger way, especially with the support of the emerging technologies in the coming days. This Digital India, if I talk about the benefits, if I talk about the things which I would do, then I think even 1 hour for me would be less. I mean, I can only say that whether you talk about UPI, you talk about digital health, you talk about digital education, you talk about Arogya Setu, or you talk about Aadhaar, or even any digital signature, eKranti, all is digital. And that is something which has made us realize further stronger during this pandemic. We have been able to sustain our living in a better way and have been able to cross this pandemic with the help of the backbone created by IT through Digital India. So that is a plan. The vision with the Digital India, when we heard earlier with our Honorable Prime Minister's and Minister's vision, when they talked about IT plus IT is equal to IT, when we talked about India talent plus information technology is going to build up the India tomorrow. So that's a vision with which we have started this journey with the government, and we plan to continue it in future years also. As FICCI, we have been committed into this area. There are various initiatives which we have built up with the support of MeitY in these areas, be it Digital Bharat, which of course this year would focus more on the Digital India 2.0 and the new normal, be it the Bhasha Antara, the language symposium where we talk about having the love for your own language, getting the content in your language, and of course, actually utilizing the services which is possible all anywhere over the internet in your own language. We talk about the cybercom, where we talk about cyber resilience and the importance it gains in through. And of course, the Frontier Technology Conclave, where we give a high focus on things like AI, ML, IoT. And we can only do this with the support of our stakeholders, primarily the MeitY and the government, and of course, the industry leaders who are present here. FICCI will continue its journey, and we are really happy to bring this session on the time when we have completed the 6 years of Digital India with the esteemed set of panelists. Now, further wasting any more discussion from my side, I would now like to invite our co-chair to kindly deliver the welcome address and obviously share his thoughts. How do he see his journey about this Digital India? Thank you. Before I hand it over to the co-chair, thank you, Shri Singh, for DIC for partnering also for this initiative, and especially thank you for your presence, for encouraging us with your words. So we really look forward to that. Over to you, co-chair, Mr. Kanishka Ejewal.
Thanks, Sarika, on that. Good evening, everyone. Glad to have you on this. I know it's midweek, but if you're listening in and tuning in, we're extremely delighted to have this program across to you. First and foremost, I want to thank and welcome Shri Abhishek Singh ji. He's the MD and CEO for Digital India Corporation, DIC, President and CEO for NEGD, and CEO for MyGov under Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India. I think it's one of his visionary pieces of driving some of these champion digital India works that we're actually seeing now the fruits of it. Shri Abhishek Singh ji, welcome to this and thank you for actually spending the next 1 hour with us. Now, I want to spend some time on what we've seen over the last, say, 12, 18 months, right? And maybe it is to do with some of it with the pandemic and when COVID-19 happened. But it's not that it has all happened because of COVID-19, right? There has been a lot of work that has happened prior to that as part of the Digital India mission. Now, when COVID-19 happened, obviously, it was in the forefront for a lot of us to look through. So you saw the impact on the economy where across the board, whether it was an urban or a rural part of India, everybody was impacted. Right? There were business models, especially the legacy business models that still were on brick and mortar, were impacted. But then as soon as the first wave started moving and we started coming out of the first wave, something really extraordinary happened. You started seeing a number of these legacy organizations actually suddenly shift from a physical to digital medium. So whether it is the delivery organizations, whether it was somebody who was giving a service or a product, they quickly shifted out from their regular brick and mortar store and started offering things digital, including services as well. Now, the key is, how did this happen? There has to be a base infrastructure for somebody to have put that in for you to transform that quickly in a matter of weeks in a lot of cases from a physical to digital medium. And the entire piece of this was Digital India. Why we see today that we were able to rapidly transform our business models, we were able to explore the digitization wave, we were able to actually get into any business irrespective of where the business is based out of. So whether a person is actually now selling out of Delhi or a remote location in India, they have the same access to the customer base. They have the same opportunities that they can be competitive as far as India and the market in India is concerned. And this is something that I think we should give credit to our nation's leaders who actually saw the benefits of this sort of digital transformation and laid the groundwork to it. What we've seen over the last 6 years, especially on the entire work on Digital India, whether it is bringing in next gen technologies, be it AI, ML, be it blockchain, and I know Abhishek Singh ji have personally championed some of these. We're now looking into things like quantum computing. We're looking at analytics. A lot of the Covin, Arogya Setu apps that we today use leverage a good chunk of this today, right? So, and we're able to bring all of this to bear for common citizen impact directly by those building blocks that have been put in for the last 6 years. So I think a number of milestones have been achieved. We've seen a number of flagship initiatives that have come across, and it's pretty, I'm going to make a bold statement, but it is almost that the Digital India program is now synonymous with the largest and the most massive digital transformation program anywhere in the world. And just take a smattering of apps that we today have for just COVID alone, and the ability that you can now scale them for not just COVID, but overall health impact, overall citizen impact is something that we're building a modular way around developing India. Now, there is no doubt that this initiative has been a key success, right? The entire Digital India, the empowerment, the infrastructure, the technology that has come in, the startup ecosystem, and as well as the investments that is coming either from internal as well as global. These have all kickstarted the economy. They have provided employment. They have provided access to new ventures and technology to our citizens. But it's also important to know that what are the next set of components for the 2.0 version of Digital India. And I think we'll try and spend some time today on it, which is, you'll have these emerging blocks coming, whether it's AI, ML, analytics, IoT devices, all of these will be a huge part of it. And at FICCI, at least our focus has always been that, as far as the AI and Digital Transformation Committee is concerned, we have crafted an agenda to be absolutely in sync to the government's agenda and initiatives around Digital India, around the next gen technologies, around any kind of further growth and promotion that might be for each of these initiatives. And we continue to stand absolutely committed with the government to just enhance these apps, enhance the ecosystem, enhance the platform, and overall the industry for the development of our nation. So with that, I think we've gathered today to discuss the next steps for Digital 2.0 in terms of leveraging emerging technologies. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. It's a pretty august panel that we've got here. I personally know some of you. So I'm really looking forward to a great session today. Thank you. Over to you, Sarika.
Thank you, Kanishka, and thank you sharing your initial thoughts on it. Like you rightly said Sir as Vicky, we are committed, and of course, you can see the gathering here. We all will be very happy to take it to the next level with you on the Digital India 2.0. And compliments from all of us side for the COVID going global. We heard that more than 142 countries have shown interest in that technology. So we really appreciate that step being taken by the government, and we really look forward to hear your thoughts on that. But something we know that as a visionary and a leader in which you have been involved in the overall process of the Digital India, it's really nice, sir. So compliments from all of us, the whole panel, to the Government of India for the same. May I now request the moderator for the session, Mr. Himanshu Kapania, to kindly take over the proceedings, set the agenda, and then, of course, we have the keynote address by Ashish Singh. Mr.
Thank,
Kapania, over to you.
thank you, Sarika, and greetings to all our esteemed panels. Good evening to our friends from the industry and learned audience who have taken time out today to join us for this important discussion on triumphs of Digital India program and its way forward. Uh, this is Himanshu Kapania, the moderator for this evening. Firstly, we pray you, your families, and close ones are safe and healthy in these pandemic times. I distinctly recall attending the launch of Digital India program at New Delhi on 1st July 2015, then organized jointly by Ministry of Electronics and IT and Department of Telecommunication. On that day, we were all inspired by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi's vision of Digital India and awestruck by the range of e-governance services launched for citizens at the venue. As participants from the telecom and electronic industry and pioneering digital technology operators, we were all in unison. And I can recall that all important captains and chairmen of large business houses, including Reliance, Tata's, Birla's, Bharti, including our global partners, including chairmen and CEOs from software industry, as well as from handset industry, from technology partners, all of them in unison committed to translate Prime Minister's dream into a reality. So it's time today to do a check. So today, after 6 years, as we review the Digital India progress, India has made major strides on adoption of digital services. Since then, the country has risen from amongst the lowest ranked broadband penetration countries to become numero uno nation globally in terms of data consumption at 12 gigabytes per user, highest in the world. India now is also the second largest mobile broadband country after China, with more than 750 million active broadband users consuming daily over 300 petabytes per day. This massive digital data consumption, as you will agree, has transformed the lives of our citizens, not only in the field of information access from internet and communication, but also the way we bank, shop, educate, and entertain ourselves. And we continue to adopt digital across multiple other service areas. Clearly, the last 6 years' achievement can be defined as a triumph for the country, where all stakeholders, including digital infrastructure providers, startups, digital technology provider, government, regulator, and other players in the ecosystem, has helped India transition from a dark analog age into this new, exciting, enthralling digital era. But you'll agree we cannot rest on our laurels. As is said in the digital age, the only constant is change, and the pace of change is accelerating. We are today being swamped with a plethora of innovative new digital technologies, which are not only powerful in isolation, but are creating a second order effect as these technologies converge. Clearly, the fourth industrial revolution era is on us, and emerging technology breakthroughs in the fields of 5G, artificial intelligence, robotics, blockchain, Internet of Things, 3D printing, augmented and virtual reality, nanotechnology, biotechnology, quantum computing, cloud computing, and I can go on, are all set to not only transform consumer life, but revolutionize the way enterprise will conduct their business. As we enter the next phase of digital disruption, the way forward will be to revolutionization of the entire enterprise domain, characterized by billions of smart devices and sensors connecting everything everywhere. In this industrial era, every sector will have to reinvent itself. And I believe even the traditional sectors like transportation, energy, supply chain, education, healthcare, agriculture, banking, and many more need to prepare for an order of disruption they've never experienced before. We at FICCI and at TED Council have been a strong proponents of the power of digital India and have shared multiple white papers of its economic impact on the GDP of the country. On the way forward, while digital India may disrupt traditional jobs, we are aligned to the study which shows that for every one traditional job lost due to digital India, more than 2.4 new digital jobs will be created. This is I call the positive disruption effect of digital India. It's our strong conviction at FICCI that digital economy impact will be even more pervasive in the forthcoming decade, with its contribution all set to rise from a current 8%, that is $200 billion, to a $1 trillion economy, nearly 20% of Indian economy GDP by year 2025, and forecasted to grow to $2.5 trillion by the year 2030. But I can continue to go on this program uh, on the positives of digital India. However, the path to digital India 2.0 will be filled with a series of challenges, like the expansion of digital infrastructure, upskilling and reskilling of workforce with digital skills, developing India's own digital application to solve real life problems in education, healthcare, agriculture, energy, introducing robust regulation on data privacy and security, and many more. With this background, I, we have a good fortune to introduce, it is my good fortune to introduce esteemed panelists who gather here today to celebrate the triumphs of digital India, but more importantly, share their vision how this journey will unfold, along with recommendations on the steps the country must take for a faster adoption of digital technologies, not only by citizens, but also by enterprise at large. So we've already had introductions. I quickly going to name this. We have Abhishek Singh, Managing Director and CEO of Digital India Corporations, need no introduction. Vikram K, veteran and from industry vertical, HP. Dr. Dovnesh Senana, Vice President, Government Affairs from SAP India. Gaurav Agarwal, co-founder 1MG, and Colonel Haridas, CEO. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, this evening, and I welcome all of you to this program. Firstly, I would like to invite Shri Abhishek Singh to deliver his keynote address. Over to you, Shri Abhishek Singh ji.
Thank you, Mr. Kapania, and thank you, Sarika, Kanishk. It's indeed an honor to be on a panel which has got the tech who's who of the country. Lavanish is here, Gaurav is here, Colonel Haridas is here, Vikram. So the agenda has been set. Himanshu has laid down, and Kanishk spoke about the digital India and the scope that is there for India's digital future. So I would just start by saying that I will go back to on 1st of July this year when we were celebrating the 6 years of Digital India, and Honorable Prime Minister interacted with the beneficiaries of Digital India across the country. And he, in his address, called the present decade to be India's decade. He referred to the coming decade as decade in which tech will decide how things would, the way things would move in the days to come, years to come. And the most important part of that interaction, if we go back to that, the Honorable Prime Minister was interacting with beneficiaries of online learning, telemedicine, agricultural e-NAM services, e-commerce in rural areas. And all these beneficiaries had joined from remote locations, and they had joined from the villages. So I remember when we were trying to set this whole thing up, we were told that let not take risk. It was going to be a live event, and we were advised that why don't you get them to an NIC center which has a reliable internet connection and ensure that nothing goes wrong. But then the discussion when it happened, we thought that if we are showcasing online learning, and if we are showcasing e-commerce or e-agriculture or telemedicine, it doesn't make sense for bringing them people to a district headquarters to connect, to talk to the Prime Minister. We said, why not? Let's try to see how 4G works. If it fails, it fails, that it will show that Digital India is not working. So we actually had sleepless nights, and we did rehearsals for 3-4 days, but it did work out well, and that made the impact, because that's what Digital India is today. If you look at the last year, since the pandemic struck, the amount of digital transformation we have seen, the pace at which digital adoption has taken place across the country has been phenomenal. We have been working on Digital India and e-governance for a long time, since the National E-Governance Plan was launched in 2006 and all. But the real fruit of Digital India was seen when the pandemic struck. It was a sad thing for all those who suffered or lost their loved ones, but the Digital India did make a mark. How did business continuity take place? And not only in the private sector, but even in the government, the pace at which government adopted to digital technologies was pretty fast. All governments kept on functioning. In fact, one of the first tech interventions that MeitY along with Niti Aayog and private sector industry partners took was building an app called Arogya Setu, which was built in around 2 weeks flat, with the collaboration of the best of the industry, the academia, the government, joining hands, building together, working in a collaborative atmosphere. And the team, when you saw those video calls in which team members joined, they would be joining from maybe 30-40 cities across the country. So it proved that today technology allows people to do remote working. Today technology allows people to work collaboratively. Technology allows to develop products and launch it. And it went on to become, today it's one of the largest used government apps that we have. As for contact tracing apps, it's one of the number of users of Arogya Setu is more than the number of users of all contact tracing apps combined across the world. So it made an impact. It was developed in that. So digital technologies allowed things to continue. The government moved on to e-office, moved on to tools like video conferencing, OpenForge, which is our GitHub for development of software products. And quickly these things were taken up. It worked very well. If you look at the impact which DBT has made, of course, we have a strong foundation in the form of the Aadhaar and the Jan Dhan bank account and the mobile, the JAM Trinity as we call it. We have almost 129 crore Aadhaar numbers, more than 110 crore mobile connections probably, and bank accounts, almost 81 crore bank accounts that are there. So when the lockdown started and the government wanted to transfer money to the bank accounts of people, it could be done seamlessly because the DBT was there backed by Aadhaar and this. So it allowed us to transfer crores of money into bank accounts of people without any problem. The total DBT transfers exceeds now almost 17 lakh crores of funds which have been transferred through DBT across various schemes. This year, when the wheat procurement took place, the wheat procurement happens in a period of around 2 months, beginning April. And this year it was decided that the funds will be transferred electronically to the bank accounts of farmers. And almost 85,000 crores of money was transferred to the bank accounts of farmers who were producing wheat. It was possible because we had made substantive investments into in ensuring financial inclusion, in ensuring tools like UPI, which enabled us to reach to the last mile in every corner of the country. We have seen a huge uptick in the projects that MeitY has been implementing. If I look at the Umang mobile users, I've seen almost 70% growth in the number of users of Umang in the last 1 year. It has grown up from around 19 million users in April last year to almost 33 million users today. DigiLocker DigiLocker allows for paperless governance, in which you can store all your digital documents, whether it's your Aadhaar or a PAN card or driving license or your vaccination certificates in a secure atmosphere on a digital platform, and with your consent, you can share it to anyone who wants it. The number of users of DigiLocker has gone up from 37 million in April last year to 66 million today, an increase of almost 78%. So So it shows that more and more people are trusting that. Of course, we have introduced the National Academic Depository, in which a class 10th, 12th certificates are available, and they can be verified by anyone electronically without you having to submit paper certificates. This year, HRD has decided to make DigiLocker the default National Academic Depository. So the university and graduation certificates will also be part of the DigiLocker. And one example that we saw of how paperless transactions and paperless verification works was when Delhi University was doing admissions last year, and the students were, because of COVID and because of social distancing, were not able to come to the colleges to submit their transcripts for 12th to the colleges themselves. Then we worked a mechanism with them for electronic verification of academic credentials through the DigiLocker. And more than 100,000 kids got admission in the DU without having to submit paper documents. Similarly, Karnataka Police was doing recruitments, and they wanted to verify the academic credentials of people who had applied for the post of constables. So that also verification was done through the DigiLocker in an electronic interface, and that helped Karnataka to save almost 6 months in the recruitment cycle for recruitment of constables. And now with the National Academic Depository becoming a part of DigiLocker, we will be able to roll out a service when industry, if you are wanting to employ somebody who is from, say, an IIT or have done his engineering or any course from anywhere, you can digitally verify his certificates. We all know that background checks and all, how much time they take, how much it costs. So it can be done very easily, very seamlessly with this digital platform that has been offered. And this is all being built in an open platform with APIs given, so that verification service will be offered as a service. And people can use this service. And not only government, even the private sector can use this service, which will greatly enable that. We are in talks with EPFO to bring in the EPFO records also there. Because very often when people apply for jobs, you want to verify whether the experience that person is claiming is actually legit or is just claiming it on his CV. But if the EPFO records are linked to that, that verification service can become very seamless. So it will cut down the time taken for people to hire team members, and that would have its own benefits in every way possible. The National Digital Health Mission, which has been launched, National Digital Health Mission is going to create a huge marketplace for health service providers and would enable telemedicine, would enable e-pharmacies, would enable people to access, discover health services very easily. So you'll be able to find out, if I want to access, if I want to consult an ophthalmologist, if you want to consult any other doctor of any other specialty, I will be able to see who all are available on a mobile app, very easily be able to connect to them, get advice through a video conferencing call, get my medical prescription electronically. That will become part of my electronic health records, will be stored in the health locker. DigiLocker is going to be one of the first health lockers for this purpose. And then I should be able to connect to a e-pharmacy, order medicines, get it at home. So this is the entire ecosystem that is being planned in a very open, interoperable manner, and the basic building blocks are being built, and it would allow people to build applications on top of it and offer services over that. So that's the whole plan in which we are working on, and more services are being added into this entire gamut of services. So the basic building blocks of Aadhaar, DigiLocker, UPI, Umang, bringing together services, doing that. Another initiative that we have taken is which we are calling it Uttara scheme, universal transparent tracking of government services. Some acronym is there, but what it primarily does is that it's going to build up a services marketplace, like for a marketplace for government services. Like today, a lot of government departments offer multiple services, and very often even till we join a particular department, we don't even know what all services the department is offering. When we go there, we find out many services. So imagine the plight of citizens who also struggle to discover services. So what we have done is that we are breaking down all the services based on their eligibility, and a tool will be there, a mobile app will be there, with which you could enter your eligibility, enter your profile with regard to whether you are a farmer, or whether you are a student, or whether you are a small businessman, or whether you are somebody who is wanting to be an entrepreneur. And then you put in your credentials, your place where you belong to, your age, and then your gender. So based on your profile, the system will recommend to you that you are eligible for these all schemes, and then you should be able to apply for those schemes. And when you're applying for those schemes, the basic data, your KYC data, will be pulled in from the DigiLocker. If you have an Aadhaar in your DigiLocker, then why do you need to prove your identity all the time? So you will authorize your DigiLocker to enter those services, and that will allow you to apply for services seamlessly. And then once the application is there, you will be able to track those services also at every level that is possible. So that's the that's the digital India vision that we are having. Of course, the challenges that we have are multifold in order to make this happen. The challenges that we are seeing is, of course, to begin with connectivity, for which the BharatNet is trying to connect each and every village with a fiber connection, so that whatever we are trying to provide, whatever digital services we are trying to provide, should not result in creating a digital divide, creating two worlds in which people who are digital haves and digital have-nots. So that's a very, very important priority. And with the new approval of taking up the BharatNet connectivity in a PPP mode, I am sure this will be expedited, and we will be able to connect every primary school, every middle school, every health center, every Anganwadi center through this digital, through this optical fiber connectivity, which will allow people to access services easily. The other challenge that we have, of course, is the online education is being offered. Diksha is giving a lot of service, but there are a lot of kids who do not have devices. And it's like being out of school for almost a year has created a major challenge. So can we think of, like we have been talking to the electronics manufacturing trip, can we have a PLI scheme, or can we have a scheme in which we promote not only provision of tablets for online learning. So that's something that's a challenge that we have. How do we enable, how do we build in capacity building at various levels? Because again, governments at the highest level, we can think of all digital schemes, but to actual implementation, you require to build in capacities at all levels. For that requires imparting digital skills, imparting attitudinal shifts, because when people adopt online services, digital services, then a lot of discretion goes. So for that, we need to prepare the government machinery at all levels to be able to equip that. So all that becomes part of our capacity building programs. So we have a lot of things coming in. Emerging technologies are one of the thrust areas, which is a theme also for this afternoon session. But emerging technology, when we talk of, it's very, like everybody talks about blockchain and quantum computing and artificial intelligence. But again, when we talk of this, we can't talk of this only in a futuristic sense. We can't say that these are technologies which will come and make a difference to it. So this will be like selling dreams which are not real. So we need to think of what are the applications of these technologies which can be applied today, and in what ways we can leverage them. AI is something which has been around us for a long time. Several government applications are using AI, for improving, say, for example, the DigiLocker uses a lot of AI image processing. Aadhaar uses a lot of it. And there are several applications. Tamil Nadu has used it for school attendance systems. It can be used for disease surveillance, especially the data that is coming from all sources. The amount of data that's available, if it's made available on open data portal, then a lot of startups and a lot of entrepreneurs can build applications on top of that. The national program on AI is seeking to address that. The data exchange model is being built in several departments, and the MeitY is also leading that initiative. So a lot of is going on, but a lot more can be done. So if we have to realize our digital India potential, we need to kind of leverage the advances that we have done, have a clear laid out vision for what can be done, join hands, collaborate with industry and academia, and move forward. So I think in the interest of time, I would conclude here, and maybe during the panel discussion, as and when required, I will make further interventions. Otherwise, digital India is such a topic on which you can keep on talking for hours together. So, but since we have a lot of, we have like very distinguished panelists here today, and it will be a pleasure to listen to them, I would conclude here, and thank you, FICCI, once again for organizing this on the 6 years of Digital India.
Thank you, Abhishek. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to hear from you. I love the passion that you have on Digital India. I am in the 26th year of being part of digital, building up digital infrastructure for this country. And I'm so impressed with the long range of services that has come in the last 6 years, which has been introduced this. So really looking forward to your intervention. But I said, let me just quickly now open the floor for discussion. I want to start with Dr. Lavnesh. As we are discussing digital first, which is now coming to forefront, not only in e-governance space, but across entire enterprise. I would like to ask you, what are the strategic focus areas for use of emerging technologies that you believe are going to be critical for taking digital first to a much higher order from a present level? Dr. Lavnesh, please.
Thank you so much, Himanshu ji, and thank you, Abhishek ji, for highlighting so much of great work that we have done. And as always, it's always a pleasure sitting with you and listening to you. Thank you so much. So as Abhishek ji mentioned, Himanshu ji, I can really start by the typical pride that each one of us takes in the in the handling of complex, diverse, huge initiatives, whether it's the Aadhaar, the CSCs, the DBTs, even the electronic manufacturing. And I'm sure all of us have experienced, once we come to the waiting area of the COVID vaccination, you can download your digital certificate in the DigiLocker. So you've just been vaccinated. You come sit in the waiting hall while that's the observation. So that's where we have come to. Now, going forward, you asked about the question on emerging technologies per se. I would say there are broadly, I would quickly highlight some of the areas where Digital India 2.0 can look at and then link the emerging technologies. So first, obviously, we have done huge work on the quantitative service delivery to the citizen. I think now the time has come for the Digital India 2.0 to move from quantitative and join the qualitative part of it. That is, in addition to the operational part of service delivery, let's add the experience part of citizens. So what is citizen feeling? And technology now makes it possible to combine the experience data with the operation data. And that's where the citizen involvement, the citizen expectation will actually become a part of the overall digital journey. That's one. Second, from the digitization effort, we have so far been, highlighting the gains that we have taken in terms of convenience to citizens, in terms of the saving in cost. I think it's now time to bring the flavor of how the Digital India program or the digitization per se is leading to our sustainability efforts in terms of the overall the saving in the pledge that we have done, the climate change, etc. That also is something that we have done. And I think we now need to move from a single window interface to a no window interface. I think we need to now become the whole of government as one. Now, on the areas, and I always say the next wave of Digital India will be digitally intelligent India. So we will be using AI, to the extent possible. Now, on the areas that you mentioned, there are a number of them. Obviously, one is infrastructure, which we have already worked on. More importantly, is the horizontal linkage between the cybersecurity and public safety that we will see emerging. Right. So as we move forward, the cybersecurity and public safety disciplines will get merged. Importantly, the new roles which will emerge as a part of the AI development, whether it's the additive manufacturing engineer or the digital twin designer, in terms of the whole work organization and redesign, we will need to have a thought process on that. And then the regulatory environment, we are already working on data-centric policies. We will now have the AI missions and whatnot. And the strength of India can always come from the modeling of the complex systems. That's another area where we will see things becoming on. Now, there are views that I have on program management, how we can do that, but I can come back to you when you come into the second round, depending on the time availability.
Thank you, Dr. Lavish. I think I like the huge concept about marrying a cross linkage between vertical and horizontal, which are obviously going to drive the use of a series of emerging technologies. All of us are aware, but I'm sure we will be finding application of these technologies in newer way, and it's going to be a lot more pervasive. Let's move on. My second question is to Mr. Vikram. Obviously, any program that is there is important that the technology needs to optimize their business model. And my question is, how can organization leverage technology to optimize business model, reach new customers and new markets? If you can share some examples, it would be very helpful for our audience.
So thanks, Himanshu. So firstly, I was spellbound and listened to this whole thing in rapt attention. What Mr. Abhishek Singh said. It's been a very, very enriching experience for us ourselves as HP, being a part of some of these journeys that he spoke about. And specific to this thing on contact tracing, when you personally experience it, it's a completely different thing. That you go to some place and you come back, and it tells you, how close to being safe you are, etc. And this is happening, real time almost in India, which has just kind of rapidly grown, I guess, digitally in the last few years. So we've been very happy to be partnering with the government in many areas. But to your point, Himanshu, so we see a lot of enterprises, and these enterprises largely who want to grow digitally. Uh, and digital is a kind of fairly broad term. And if you were to kind of shorten it and narrow it down to kind of 2 or 3 areas, everybody wants to stay connected. And this was the point Kanishka, I think, brought up firstly, saying that look, suddenly the whole of India opened out as a market for every seller, right? So if you kind of putting e-commerce platforms, so on and so forth, you're going to bring some of these connectedness together. You're going to make your organization a little more programmable in the sense that, to the point Mr. Abhishek Singh mentioned, building with a common API, a bunch of applications that speak to each other, and he spoke about services. And to kind of broad base it, I would use the term perhaps microservice. And if you build that, and then you have this other aspect of having all your systems internally in the enterprise suggest ways and means of progress. And then that would mean that you're making a whole environment autonomous. If you're combining all of these three, then obviously you kind of heading a long way being digital. And of course, when you throw a lot of jargons in, then you bring in AI and ML and all of that. But eventually, I think faceting data to getting closer customer intimacy has been the big challenge of every enterprise in the last year and 3 months or 4 months. Much as some of us in business might imagine that it was because of us that business continued, I would imagine the brands helped, the digital platforms that we put together helped. Between the time I last traveled and now, the the overall UPI transactions have grown by 40%, and this is thanks to the government of India, people like Mr. Abhishek and his peers who kind of imagined this. And this is just UPI transaction. And if you kind of parallelly look at the bank transactions that have gone up, it is likewise. Just go check the RBI figures for how each bank has performed. So there has been a quantum jump because of the JAM architecture. There's been a quantum jump because of UPI, so on and so forth. So coming back, so if people are embarking on a big digital journey and very specific to the fact that we are wanting to create a sort of tsunami of unicorns or startups, so on and so forth, I think perhaps one of the better ways to do it is to reduce your capital exposures. And there are many models available, because most promoters these days would be more concerned about the EBITDA, and hence, how many times EBITDA is the evaluation of the company, so on and so forth. We have some, and most people have some wonderful models, which are around financial services, to remove entry barriers to transformation. Because every time you embark on a digital project, it's a little experimental in nature before it becomes experiential in nature, and it becomes a steady state. So to cross those barriers, we have models which are both focused on consumption models, irrespective of whether the enterprise needs platforms or infrastructure or networks or software or the kind of adhesives to bring it all together. So that is the thing that we are seeing. And as most organizations today going 2 or 3 ways, they're data driven and they're in a hybrid world. We're right now with the age, right? We are all in our respective places. Earlier, this would have been a forum where we would have met together face to face physically. So there is a bandwidth aspect, there's a telecom aspect. So we're bringing many things together in a hybrid mode, and and the decision making is going to be data driven, and it's of course also cloud centric. So to bring all of this together, increasingly what we are putting together is our consumption models that can make the entry barriers to all digital transformations much lower. That's our objective, and that's what we're seeing happening. An example would be a company called Wibmo, which might not be known by its name itself, but if all of us would have used SMSs as a security measure to do a transaction, that's one company that actually does it for about 160 banks in the country. So they use all of this in a consumption model, and they've kind of grown leaps and bounds in the years that they've established themselves. And that's a outstanding example of one of those startups that's a going firm and going strength to strength.
Thank you so much, Vikram. All I can tell you that it is far easier to now sell the digital program within the board than it was probably 3 to 5 years back.
Certainly.
So earlier, I used to go back and they used to ask all the financial questions. Today, we are able to do that without meeting a financial ROI because people are looking at time, we are looking at models which are finally beyond here and now there. So obviously, your points made are very, very relevant. I move on to the extremely important topic is digital adoption. Abhishek had talked about it. And from a telecom perspective, all of us have seen the scale at which we have moved in the last 5 years from almost non-existent 4G to a level of 750 million mobile broadband users. So it appears that we have arrived and there is the whole India is covered. But as you know that India is a very large country, and with 1.3, 1.35 billion users, digital adoption will continue to be an extremely important parameter. It's had its major impact during ongoing pandemic. I'm going to ask Gaurav to start with. What is your view? How can is digital adoption in the medical field improving? And what is your thoughts? How can it improve to a completely different scale and level over the next 3 years?
Hi, first of all, thank you for having me on the panel. And Mr. Abhishek's initial keynote was actually very energizing. We hear about Digital India, we know it's hugely impactful, but once you start to hear about all the bits and pieces and things happening, right, it just starts to hit you how big of an impact and how expansive that vision is and how much has been accomplished, in the last 3-5 years. But as said, there's miles to go before we sleep. So we all have an important part to play in that journey. Now, at 1MG, we've had, fortunately, a very, very close ringside view of how technology adoption, can aid healthcare. And our fundamental view when we started 1MG was that India cannot solve its healthcare problems unless digital technologies come to the fore, right? We just didn't have enough physical infrastructure, enough, let's say, trained healthcare personnel who could deliver a high quality healthcare experience to users in the country. Over the past 3-5 years, we've seen that adoption significantly scale up, right? 5 years back, people would ask us, hey, who's going to order medicines online, right? But today, almost everyone I know is starting to order medicines online, or at least has that in the consideration set. And while again, taking a cue, while COVID has been horrible for us as humans, for our families, for the sheer impact it has had, I think without digital adoption, the impact of COVID would have been so much harder on us. And I'll give you some simple, specific examples. The fact that people were able to do teleconsultations when you could not visit clinics was a huge aid during COVID times. The fact that during lockdowns, people with chronic diseases could get their medicines delivered to them at home in a safe, authentic fashion was a huge impact. The fact that you could get your diagnostic reports delivered digitally was a huge, huge benefit. And we have seen COVID actually drive a massive leapfrog of digital adoption of at least healthcare services in the last year and a half. When the first COVID wave happened, we saw a step jump where people moved from, in lock, stock, and barrel, moved from the physical infrastructure, discovered the digital infrastructure, found it to be very, very good for a certain set of use cases. The second wave happened and more people transferred, right? And this adoption of digital healthcare is getting massively accelerated. Now, what does this digital adoption actually get us? I think what it gets us fundamentally is what we've been talking about at 1MG, which is it makes healthcare understandable. If you think about what an individual needs, regardless of the socio or the demographic profile of that user, what an individual needs is the right information to make good healthcare choices, right? Up until now, before digital, actually digital has the potential of delivering that information, that content at a very, very low cost with a very, very high degree of trust and accuracy, right? Because we know 1MG today, for instance, is the gold standard for medicine information and medicine brands in the country. If your doctor prescribes you something, a lot of people now, go look up on 1MG, what is the information around that medicines, what are the side effects. A lot of pharmacists use 1mg to figure out, what are the alternatives available, and a lot of patients go back to their doctors to access cheaper substitutes. So in some ways, if you think about it, technology is the biggest equalizer, right? It makes the same information, the same services accessible to everyone, regardless of how rich or poor I am. The only difference in being able to pay. So information is one big digital service that has acted as an equalizer, right? Similarly, if you think about consultations, the fact that if you're living in a tier 3, tier 4 city, your access to quality healthcare, quality doctor is much lower than the access to a doctor that I can get, let's say, sitting in a Gurgaon or sitting in Mumbai, right? Digital actually breaks that divide. It makes the same quality of doctor available regardless of where you are in India. And I'll give you another example. The government has this really ambitious program called CSE, which is Common Services Center. It brings broadband internet connection to approximately 10 lakh villages and makes e-governance and other e-health e-services available to villagers in that city. They run a very, very cool telemedicine program through those services, making teleconsultations actually available to people who live in villages who may not have access. So this is really what technology is driving from an adoption from a quality of care, quality of services perspective when it comes to the healthcare sector in general.
Thank you so much. I think there is so much to be done on digital adoption across all sectors. We can keep going on this topic, but in the paucity of time, I would like to now move on and address the question to Abhishek. I think we were all very impressed with the kind of work that is happening in the Digital India program. And I must applaud the work that has happened in the last 6 years, the quantum of services and the scale of services and the quality of services that has come in on e-governance. What we would like to know from you is what's your vision for the next phase of campaign and what is the exact expectations from the industry? Over to you, Abhishek.
Mr. Kapania, I think he just messaged me. He got some people have dropped in his office, so he's there. I think he might join in any moment.
It's okay. I will move on. I will move on.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir has joined.
Yeah. Abhishek, did you get a chance to hear my question? Shall I repeat it?
Yeah, please, if you can repeat it.
Yeah, I was saying we are all very impressed by the quantum and the scale of work that is happening in Digital India, the range of services that we launched, and its impact is just humongous. And in a short period of 5 to 6 years, impact, and we can go on and on. And your very passionate speech is, I think, impressed all of us. But what we are keen to hear, and the audience is keen to hear, is what is your vision for Digital India going forward, and what is the real expectation from the industry so that we can become partners in your vision?
See, industry has been a partner, and industry will remain a partner, because the projects under Digital India are such that it cannot be done by government itself. It has to be done hand in hand with the industry. So whether it comes to, say, for example, whether it's infrastructure or services, industry has been part of us. So like as I mentioned, one of the big initiatives the government has announced, the BharatNet project will be taken to all the villages, which will be done in a PPP mode, public-private partnership mode. So when it comes to offering connectivity, it is to be done in a PPP mode. When it comes to data centers, along with what NIC provides, MeitY has empaneled cloud service providers. Kanishk is here, the Amazon, or whether it's Google or Sifi or it's so all the data, Amazon, Microsoft, all of them are providing data center services, and they are empaneled by MeitY. They're available on GEM, and infrastructure for data center hosting and services is available from the private sector. Similarly, when it comes to applications, the way we are building applications is to build the common platform and the common infrastructure. For example, in NDHM, the way NDHM has been visualized, the National Digital Health Mission will provide the basic building blocks, will provide the doctor registries, will provide the health service provider registries. It will provide the basic architecture, the verification, and wherever statutory requirements are there, that will be ensured by the National Health Authority. And on top of that, Gaurav, if 1mg and Gaurav, they want to offer some services on top of that, they will be able to offer services on top of that. The model of UPI is being replicated there by building a unified health interface which is an interoperable interoperable architecture-based network in which citizens can connect to service providers seamlessly. So just like UPI allows a Google Pay to work, Bheem to work, a Paytm to work, a PhonePe to work, similarly, unified health interface will allow multiple health service providers to provide services on top of that. So we will see a lot of services coming in there. Education is moving in that same direction. Like the Diksha platform has been built in, the education, the NDR, which was announced in the budget, is being made, visualized in the enterprise architecture framework. So on top of that, education service providers will be able to offer services on that. Agriculture, they have come out with the enterprise architecture framework. The discussion document is there on their website, in which they will provide various service providers in the agriculture domain to offer services for farmers and all. So as we go ahead, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's services, whether it's applications, there will be ample space for the private sector providers to offer services on top of that and create value. So that's the overall approach and strategy on which we are moving in for implementation of Digital India projects.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. This is really very exciting. And
I would also like to mention that there are certain developments, and I have a meeting at 6 o'clock also, which is coming up. So I will need to drop out. In fact, I will need to drop out, and I thank you all again for letting me join this.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. It's really, I have only one last request before you go. FICCI is part of Government of India's program on BRICS digital program, and we've taken one of the initiatives of e-governance to be able to showcase this from beyond India into all BRICS countries, and we will seek your help to be able to make a strong presentation to BRICS countries on the work that is happening to it. So Sarika and FICCI team will come back to you with this. Thank you so much, and we really love your passion, and we look forward to be able to interact with you more often. All the best to your vision.
Look forward
Thank
to
you.
With you.
Yeah. My request is if we can continue for another 5 minutes, so we can. This is a very, very interesting panel, and I don't think we can cover do justice in a very small period of time. So I'd like to address my next question to Colonel Haridas, and extremely important sector, which is farming and agriculture. And I believe the next area that we need to really expand our digital is in this space. My question to you, Colonel Haridas, is how technology and smart devices can enable sectors like farming and agriculture to expand as far as and what are the likely challenges as we expand digital into agriculture sector? Over to you, Colonel Haridas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Himanshu, for that question. Before I answer that question, I would like to thank FICCI for inviting me for this very important talk. And as far as the question per se is concerned, I mean, the putting in AI and ML framework will help in identifying the data points of digitization, which Mr. Abhishek was speaking, as to how exactly are the data points to be collected. When it comes to agriculture, it is a huge sector. It's a huge sector. And it is going to be the digitization which is going to transform India in terms of increasing the production, increasing the output. Technology like AI, ML, IoT have addressed a range of challenges throughout the farming and agriculture food system. It has helped to identify the crop to be grown as per the soil in a particular area, because today soil testing has become very, very modern. It is not done the way it was done 10 years back. And it has helped us to improve the seed quality. It helps the farmers to maximize the crop yields. It has helped them to reduce the risk in agriculture by forecasting pest and disease outbreak. If you see today, I mean, I'm just going into a global perspective. We are 7.2 billion on Earth and expanding. Requirement of food will keep on increasing. How do we provide? This is the first challenge. 2, the second challenge would be nutritional food is becoming a challenge because of the various factors. I won't go deep into it. Nutritional values in the food grains is coming down. It is predictive and prescriptive analytics which is going to solve this problem. So the way forward, which Mr. Abhishek was telling, he would look for from industry and with people who are interacting today. What I would like to throw open my vision, my view, what we do in data analytics is that how can we provide affordable technology platforms which can be used by marginal farmers, that is farmers with small land holdings of 2 to 3 hectares. We have to find out technology which will be used by marginal farmers. The present day subsidies which is there, I mean, if this, along with the subsidies, if we can incentivize farmers who are using technology, it will be a big leap. It will be a big leap because there will be more and more farmers who will come forward and use technology. There should be a huge moment. We are aware of the moment like the Green Revolution under Dr. Swaminathan or the White Revolution for milk under Dr. Kurian. Similarly, we have to have some kind of a revolution where the sponsor should be the central government, the state government, to digitize the entire agriculture land records of the country. Digitization is a must to have the digital India move the way it has been envisaged by our Honorable Prime Minister. Then we have to educate and train the farming community. So this is how I feel that the challenges which the agriculture sector is facing today can be mitigated with the help of technology.
Thank you so much, Colonel Haridas. I know this is really late, but agriculture is extremely important for adoption of all traditional sectors. Adoption of digital is extremely important for taking the country forward. Now, Dr. Lavnish, if I can take my last question with you, I know it's late and you have to rush for the next meeting, but our audience is very keen to be able to hear your views, especially views about SAP. As more and more new digital technologies comes in, how can startups and especially MSME benefit from these digital technologies? And also we'd like to know what is SAP's view about what should be the new digital strategy for the nation. Dr. Lavnish.
Thank you so much. That's a very important question on the MSME, as we call it, micro included in the SME. With 63 million SMEs contributing to around 33% of India's manufacturing GDP and 25% of services GDP. Any talk that we speak of a digitization resulting in a national level improvement is actually incomplete without SMEs. And SMEs in India actually have the dual opportunity. One, obviously, use of digital for their transformation and improving competitiveness, and second is becoming the producers of solutions in emerging technologies or for that matter manufacturing products. So when we see the digitization of SMEs in India, there are four broad areas that we see where probably action could be concentrated and focused. First and the foremost in India is this whole issue of awareness about technology itself, right? So the awareness among SMEs in terms of what all is available in terms of innovative business models at an affordable price that they can latch on and use for digital transformation, that itself is one big area. And there are parallel initiatives right now from the government as well as from the industry. As an example, as SAP, we have started a program called Global Bharat, wherein we are getting SMEs onto a community so that they can exchange information among themselves. So that's one. Second is the whole issue of access to low-cost technology solutions itself. That's where the role of industry comes in, and that's where we see the cloud-based business software at least is a big potential. For example, we offered our Business One suite for at a very affordable price. The third area that we see as a big potential for technology in SMEs is this whole access to global markets, and the experience shows when Indian SMEs are connected to the global market on a B2B network, there is a corresponding pull in the SMEs for them to digitize. And so that, again, example coming from our side, we have this business network called Ariba, which we opened the access, on Ariba Discovery for Indian SMEs so that they can have a look at opportunities elsewhere and then bring it back. And fourth very important point is the availability and access of talent pool, which SMEs can actually access to ensure that their digitization journey is facilitated. The talent pool typically remains the proprietary capture of large industries with big pockets. So the talent pool for specifically for segment, and that's where we see a lot of government industry partnerships coming up in terms of the ministry signing MOUs with companies like us and others to actually create digital pools. So the four broad areas, and some of these have direct linkage to the Digital India program also. The availability of skilling, the larger awareness programs and all. So if we address these four areas, and the good point is all of us in individual capacity, whether it's enterprise software, fintech, mobile, or telecom, or emerging technologies like IoT, we are doing our efforts. There is this integration layer which is quite possible in the landscape of SMEs in India. That's what I feel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lavnish. I'm a big fan of SAP, and the fact that we have seen SAP having introduced public cloud and make ERP available to a lot of SMEs and MSMEs is a extremely important initiative from your side. And clearly, on the BRICS Digital Council, we are discussing in quite a detail on SMEs, how on a B2B technology transfer, how SMEs can work there. And I'm sure companies like SAP and HP can really help SMEs to be able to take the big leap that is important from them, both in terms of technology and as far as talent is concerned. I just move on to Mr. Vikram. My last question to you is again on emerging technologies. And I think for the success of Digital India, the adoption of emerging technology is going to be really important. And my question is, how can we reimagine or organization can reimagine their future with these emerging technologies, especially those organizations which are in the remote areas or are highly operational and transaction focused?
So nice one. So, like I said, I was just hearing Abhishek ji speak about it. So I think the BharatNet thing is going to be a fairly important, I think, milestone from India's perspective. We see a lot of work by some of the other public sector organizations which have been in the telecom sector in trying to get this whole B and C class, second, third, fourth tier cities in India connected. To some of the examples given earlier, even Arogya Setu, for instance, many of the developers, many of the coders were actually people from not from the main metros. They were from all over the place. So, and if you go back on the discussions that we had today, I think all of these digital initiatives that we have sort of spawned in India appears to be making one large market, which is not just India, perhaps the world itself, being made available to these enterprises, irrespective of whether they're startups or going firms, and irrespective of the locations that they are. So the technologies are going to be clearly the connecting technologies, the security that will be required to operate in such an hybrid environment, the frameworks. Obviously, because they're going to be spawning lots of data, it is going to be highly data centric. Hence, the security of data and the kind of uptimes and the guarantee that will be prevailing, and a whole lot of this artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms and tools and containerization technologies. Because if you're going to kind of go extra scale in your capabilities, then a whole lot of these need to come together and come into play. And of course, there will be consumption models like Green Lake that we have, for instance. Incidentally, we've even come together with SAP and made some of these a reality, some of the business suite softwares and all of that. So that's how I see it.
Thank you so much, Vikram. I think role of emerging technology is going to be extremely critical for the next phase of Digital India. I move to my last question. I know I've already stressed myself this, but this is a very last question, but it's so important that we get views of Gaurav on this. The role of artificial intelligence. We've spoken about artificial intelligence in every panelist, but the role of artificial intelligence, in my view, is similar to the role what electricity played in the previous industrial revolution.
Chair, if I may intervene here, Sarika, Gaurav had to drop off because the another meeting, and it was such enriched panel. Of course, the questions are not completed, but unfortunately, he's not there right now currently for this.
Okay, so I'll check this with Colonel Haridas. What do you think? How do you think implementing AI is going to achieve the vision of Digital India, especially its impact on socio-economic sectors? So, and how can we make AI far more pervasive from a current level? It remains to be more on a theoretical framework, and how can we make it a lot more practical and a lot more adopted than from a present level? Dr. Colonel Haridas, please. Can you hear me? You're mute. Colonel Haridas.
Yeah. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. So a very important question. If you see, as far as I mean, all the co-panelists and even Mr. Abhishek was of the opinion that the way the digitization has taken place in the country. I mean, 5 years, 6 years back when this and when the digital India thing started. So that was the time when we first of all decided that we will transform our country by using the technology which is cheaply available, which was adopted. And then after that, we started moving into the niche technology areas. So that is very, very important thing, which is going to transform India. So your question, as far as pertaining to the socio-economic sector, we have to keep certain perspectives in mind when we are framing the policy. So the first and most important thing is that we should not leave out any sector. I feel it is very, very important that no sector should be left out. No cross-section of the people should be left out when we are doing this revolution. The second thing is that we should ensure that there is no digital divide. We always have been speaking about how to ensure that there is no digital divide. So here, the strata of the society which we are planning to give this technology to are of diverse factor. We should enforce that this diverse factor doesn't come into a hurdle as far as implementing the technology is concerned. Third, the people who are implementing, like I was also in the government sector for some time. So I know that there has to be accountability, and accountability has to be fixed on the implementers. So as far as the deliverables are concerned and the timelines are concerned, on that, if we have got some kind of accountability, then we will see that the transformation and digitization of the country takes place in time, and no socio-economic sector would be left out of this revolution.
Thank you so much, Colonel Haridas. And I know this is, I've overshot the time by more than 10 minutes, but this was such an important and such a engaging session. I want to close this session by thanking each of the panelists. We've got so much information on the quantum of work that's happening on Digital India, both on e-governance side as well as in private sector, and the kind of opportunities that exist both in emerging technology as well as in adoption that can take this country to a completely different level. And it is not only about technologies and its adoption, it also has a significant economic impact. It's our belief at FICCI that Digital India will be the way forward for the country, for its going back to double-digit growth. And we're quite convinced at FICCI that finally Digital India will reach its true size, with reaching a 1 trillion size by 2025. And our speculation or our estimates are that it will reach 2.5 trillion by 2030. With these words, I hand it back to Sarika to do a closing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Kapania, for handling this session. I know we overshot by time. I'm sure, like we talked about Digital India 2.0, we need a Digital India second version of this session as well, because such a depth of knowledge and speakers bring there. So, of course, that's something which is there. So, thanks a lot for all of you for joining in. We know that we had Abhishek Singh, sir. We was there. He was, of course, he had to rush in because of some other urgent meeting which came up in between. And of course, our eminent set of panelists, Dr. Lavnish, Mr. Vikram, Gaurav, of course, he has to leave, and Colonel Haridas, and our moderator, Mr. Kapani, and co-chair, Kanishka, thank you for joining in. I'll, of course, like to also acknowledge the presence of 200 delegates who are right online. Sorry, because of the time thing, we cannot take your questions. I know we have got the set of 19 questions. We will see how best we can get it taken offline with our panelists. I would also acknowledge the support which we have received it from SAP and HPE, through which we could deliver this session. Thank you for supporting our initiative and motivating us for doing these kind of activities. With these words, we close down the session and look forward to more interactions in future. And definitely we will get back to you with the second version of this, because we can see that there is lots of discussion which still requires to be done, and people are more than happy to get into the discussion. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.